spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. Sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Oh, Lynn, it is going. I'm excited about the new way we're doing things. So that I don't have to get through current events this time. People can listen to it as the previous episode to this one, and it'll be the next episode to this one. But this time we're gonna, we're gonna go almost straight to our main topic.
Yeah, something we're trying out new. So if you didn't catch the current events last week, then you'll know that we're not doing the current events this time. It was last week, and then we'll do it again, like Ken said, next week. So this is episode 339, Ken.
339? That is amazing.
I know.
That is amazing, Lynn. Kudos to you. Seriously,
to you.
sometime we'll have to explain to everybody everything you do for this podcast. So, yeah.
But we are the #1 Disneyland podcast, hosted by 2 former Disneyland Custodial cast members.
#1.
We are also authors of the books Cleaning the Kingdom. We have 2 books, so you can get both those on Amazon, not signed, or if you want them signed, you can get them on our website, thesweepspot.com. You can get a deal if you want to get both of them. It's on the website there. Also, you can get those books on like digital, like Kindle or whatever. And audiobook for the first book you can get right now. The second one's coming out this fall, late fall, something like that. So, but this kind of lead into something. If you want to get the audiobook first, before anyone else does, come and you're going to the D23 Expo, we will have physical copies of both of our books available to purchase.
Wow.
I know, right?
Nice. All right.
But speaking of things that we do, we also have a Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon, and we have all kinds of neat things there. What we do is when you join, we announce that you've joined. We announce your name. We have a bonus episode that we record once a month, and you have access to that. And then we allow you to, you're allowed to be a part of our current events once a month, and in the chat forum, and you're allowed to leave comments, and we'll try to integrate, the comments into our discussion while we record current events.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So to do that, go to our website, thesweetspot.com, click on the Patreon link, or go to patreon.com and search the Sweet Spot. It's $5 or more, and you get all that, what I mentioned. And Ken, we have one person recently that just joined us.
Oh, wonderful.
His name is Michael Parks.
Oh, that's how appropriate.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. So hope you take advantage of some of those things we're offering. I hope to see you record our current events next time. You'll get should receive a notification. I try to put it out twice, like a week before and then like a day of or a day before, with a link that you would click on and then would take you. It's like through a YouTube thing. It's invite only. Anything else here? Oh, I have a quick little thing here. My son and I took a little trip down to Southern California last week. We went to the Angel game. We did some other stuff. But one thing we did do was we went to Disneyland for one day, and We had a good time. We were there. We went from park opening. We got there like at 7:45, and we were there. We didn't stay all night. I think we stayed till about 10 o'clock, 10:30, somewhere in there. But we had a good time, and we stayed at the Howard Johnson's, Hojo Anaheim, there on Harbor Boulevard. Just like a 8 minute walk to the front gates of Disneyland. And they have upgraded rooms right now, or not upgraded, they have renovated rooms right now in buildings 1 and 2. So if you request buildings 1 and 2, you'll get the renovated rooms. They're really nice. They kind of have a retro look to them. I don't know what you would call it, like a 60s thing. And so if you want to stay at Howard Johnson's, you go to our website, click on the Howard Johnson link. There's also like a code there, and you will get a special discount just by doing that. So check that out, and that's really all I'd say. I mean, the trip was fun. We did all the stuff. Got to ride on Pirates. There was one thing I was a little concerned about that was broken before it went down. It was still broken, so I don't know if it has something to do with like them getting parts in or what. But the turntables, like the women chasing the men with food, the men chasing women with food and this and that. They weren't moving. They were just still. So, and it was like that when last time I had gone on it, which was, I don't remember, a while back, November. So I don't know what was going on, but that was it. But we had a good time. So I don't really have any like big notes on it or anything. I mean, we just did all the normal attractions we did, and we did 19. I write these things down. We did 19 attractions that day.
Wow, good going.
Ate at Bengal Barbecue, Hungry Bear, got ice cream on Main Street, and just go. But we had a good time. One last thing, I mentioned D23 Expo. We will be there selling our books, audio versions of our books, physical copies of paperback books, and we'll sign them for you. If you have books that you've already bought, you can bring those, and we will sign them. And we'll have some buttons to hand out if you say you listen to our podcast. So I would love to see you out there. So I'm going to mention that every episode until it happens. So that's on September 9th, 10th, 11th. And you can click on the link on our website, and then it'll give you all the info on how to get tickets and all that. All right. I think we need to get right into our main topic, right? Who's our guest tonight, Ken?
Well, our guest is somebody we worked with in Custodial, and her name is Jennifer Furfaro. We would affectionately refer to her as Foof. So she's going to have some wonderful stories to tell us, and I'm looking forward to it, and I think the listeners should too. And this is all made possible by our friends at Concierge. So if you need any of your, if you need to make a Disney getaway vacation plan, then contact Concierge. That's CONCIEARS.com, concierge.com, our magical vacation planning partners.
So did you grow up going to Disneyland? Like, did you grow up in the area?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah? All right.
Yes. It was a huge part of my life. Total dream. That when I got I actually didn't get hired the first time I applied because I don't know if you remember, Disney was very strict
Yeah, I was saying that. Mm-hmm.
about who they hired, and they considered your mode of transportation. If you didn't have your own car, they wouldn't hire you. You couldn't take a bus, or
I knew they were scraping the bottom of the barrel, and they hired me. I mean, it was like, come on now. By then they had lowered their standards, so anyway.
I mean, their standards were not inclusive at the time that I hired in. I mean, they didn't even make a costume over a certain size. So it is good that they changed some things. But, yeah, I went and I interviewed, and they're like, we love you, you're perfect. Unfortunately, you don't have your own car. So when you get your own car, give us a call back, and we'll hire you. And they were as good as their word. 6 months later, I'm like, I have my own car now. And they're like, you're hired. And they had originally offered me attractions. And I had a friend who was already in attractions, and my ADHD was just not going to let me sit in one spot for 20 minutes at a time. Welcome back, loggers. And I asked for custodial. I asked for it. I wanted that movement, that freedom. And as I didn't know at the time, but as I grew to know, especially being a leader, I thrive in organized chaos. that is something that I just do really well in that environment, and I enjoy it. And I just got better and better at it as time went by. But it was interesting because I was very, very shy as a kid and as a teenager, and you guys don't know me as shy at all. But I was really shy when I hired in. And my trainer, the person who I had for orientation and training for like 3 days in a row, was Donna Brunier, who you interviewed a while back. And I remember on the third day of training, I asked a question, and she looked at me like she probably remembers this. With her mouth open, she's like, "Oh, I thought you would never speak," and then I turned beet red.
Oh no.
But it was becoming a lead that brought me out of my shell. When I turned lead, I was one of the youngest leads they'd ever made, and there weren't that many female area leads either.
When were you hired in? Just so we kind of get a time.
Oh, November 19th, 1989.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
How long before you turned lead, since you were mentioning lead?
I worked there for 2 years before I turned lead.
Okay. So 91-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It was, I knew that I'd watched some other people before me, and I knew that the things I shouldn't do, especially since I would have something to prove. But it was not to act like I had something to prove. It was just to work hard and be a good example and be respectful. This was the biggest thing. Be respectful of the people that had all of those years in front of me, and to value their feedback. Ultimately make my own decisions, but I knew that I didn't know everything. Having leadership qualities is great, but if you don't tap your resources, you're not going to be successful. And so that's something I learned very early on. It took me longer to learn other things. I was a bit hot-headed when I was young. I'd mellowed out considerably by the time, about 10 years in, I guess you could say. But but I didn't make that mistake. I stood my ground where I needed to, and worked hard. And most people, you can't please everybody. You're going to rub somebody the wrong way. Yeah. Most of the time with me, that was people who didn't want to work, so that didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I liked the biggest compliment that I heard repeatedly through my 24 years. Well, I didn't hear too much towards the last maybe 5 years because it was a different dynamic then. Mm-hmm. But for the majority of time, one of the greatest compliments I've received is I've never worked so hard, but also had so much fun. Mm. Yeah. And that's like the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. We work at Disneyland, you know? I mean, it's such a wonderful environment.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a unique environment. And I miss it every day.
Yeah.
I left when I had my son. I left in 2012 to stay home with him. And it was hard. I mean, I literally grew up there. It's, you know, people that had been, they're still my friends. And people that never worked at Disney, or I would even go as far as saying any theme park environment, but especially Disney, is that you do bond in a different way. Mm-hmm. You become family, you know. It's like hearing from you guys. You know, yeah, maybe we don't, like, keep in touch a lot, but we're like, hey, it's so good to hear from you. It's so nice to hear your voice. It's just automatic.
It's almost like...
We have a special place.
Yeah, like when we might not see each other for a long time, but then when we do, it's like we almost pick up from where we left off in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I went to Shirley Payne's retirement recently, and they had given me access to come in for it. It was at Lincoln Theater.
Cool.
And just seeing people that I've known since I was 19 years old. And of course, I saw Marcy Childress, and she of course starts crying.
Oh.
That's Marcy. And gives me a big hug, and there was a lot of that. And you just have the biggest grin on your face like all day long. It's and then when I went to go leave, I was like, you guys have to escort me out. Like, your way around. You can walk backstage. You can go say hi to people. I'm like, oh, awesome. Got your sticker. Like, I wouldn't hang out till midnight and watch, like, no, I'll just mosey my way through. And I used to get, I got emotional then, too. I always get emotional when I go to the West Side, in case anybody doesn't know who Foof is. I was a West Sider, diehard. New Orleans Critic Country.
Yep.
And I used to take my son when he was really little, and we'd hit the Pirate Bridge, and I would, like, get all, I'm home. He'd roll his eyes and be like, I know, Mommy, you miss it. And then it was lots of running into people that had just been my family. Because I was so entrenched over there that, I was closer to a lot of the attractions and merchandise people and even maintenance people on that West Side than even in my own department, because we were around each other every day.
Right.
And we looked after each other every day. And I think one of the hardest things to get used to when you leave Disney and enter into another kind of environment that may be more realistic to how the real world works, but you've been very spoiled, is that, and it's cheesy as hell, but, the whole one team, one dream, like, it works. It really works. I've had experiences since then that have been so the opposite, where people are just completely against each other, and it's not about the service, and for us, even if we're like, roll our eyes like, oh, outdoor vending, that damn lemon punch wagon, they drive us insane.
Right.
But the park came first, the guest came first. We always agreed on service. Mm-hmm. And anything else we had to work out internally, we took care of, but we always put the park first.
Right.
And I've been in environments since then where they don't care about the campus or, the office building or whatever it is that I've been. Mm-hmm. They don't care if it suffers. They don't care if it goes without service.
Right.
They put themselves first or their union first or whatever it is that they don't. And that has been, that's left a bad taste in my mouth. But I also realize that's kind of more of the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
the training that we had, the mindset. I could not have received better training as a leader from anywhere but Disney.
Right.
And I've used it through my whole life.
Yeah.
It's, even the inspect what you expect, like those little things that they ingrained in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Invaluable.
But also going through something that bonded us together was going through a hard cleanup, a Fantasmic cleanup, our parade cleanup, our show, and getting through that and succeeding and, making it look nice after it looked terrible.
Yeah.
And that's something...
We loved it.
Yeah.
We took so much pride in it. It was such, even though it would seem for some people to be just repetitious and every night, I don't know, there was an energy to it. The music was still going on, we were always working hard, goofing on, seeing who can get it clean the fastest, in a safe way, get it clean the fastest, interesting interactions. We had strange things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were you guys there the night that the carts got sucked into the water cannon?
No, but
the fish got sucked up in the water cannon?
What happened?
So, originally, Rivers of America had fishing. So there's catfish and carp in Rivers of America to this day. Mm-hmm. And whenever they drain it, they usually try to preserve, them as much as they can. When the show initially started, we had some issues with some poor ducks.
Oh, no.
But they got used to it very quickly to not be around during Fantasmic. But the fish usually weren't a problem.
Yeah.
And the scene where Monstro was slamming his tail down.
Uh-huh.
It's a huge splash of water that comes out towards, kind of most towards B Tower, right in the center. And you might get a little water if you're in the front.
Uh-huh.
That cannon had sucked up a huge carp, and it had shot it out of the cannon in a million pieces. Was splattering into the crowd.
Oh, no.
People were, grossed out and horrified. We were just writing ticket after ticket for people to go get new shirts. Something like, there's a fish head, check a fish head in my baby's stroller. And they're trying not to laugh hysterically because it was such a freak thing. I don't think that happened again.
That's crazy.
But, those are also bonding stories where people just, go to reunions or whatever. Do you remember that time?
Yeah.
Or, do you remember that time when Fantasmic had broken down for the third time in a row? Do you remember how long it used to take them to reset the show?
Yeah.
It was 20 minutes. And it was almost the show length, and they got it down to 5 minutes eventually.
Wow.
The people had become so angry that they were throwing their china and the plates and the trays from Riverdale Terrace, and they picked up a full-size trash can and threw it in the river.
Oh.
It was just angry crowds.
Wow.
But those are the things that you laugh about now.
Yeah.
That you're dealing with the public the way we did. Mm-hmm. It's just this cross section of humanity. Every kind of person in the world you're going to run into.
Yeah. From all over the world. Yeah.
Which is, yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a melting pot? We had it all there in those acres.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, what about let's talk about Fantasmic, since I guess it came back this summer, and there was a time I was talking with Lynn about this. I don't think that you guys were the initial leads, but I think it was Loretta and somebody else the initial Fantasmic leads, but then for the longest time, they had two Fantasmic leads it was Joanne and you.
Yeah. Loretta was the first Fantasmic one. And then someone else when the show first started, but it wasn't for like the whole summer. Maybe it was that first summer. The first summer, it was Loretta, and I can't remember who Fantasmic 2 was. And then Joanne and I took it the second summer until they got rid of Fantasmic 2, and then I became New Orleans.
You became the New Orleans lead. This is, by the way, folks, this is entirely from custodial perspective. This is not crowd control or running the show. It was, what happened was they needed, at first, you had the Adventure Frontier foreman covering that area. You had the New Orleans Square Clear Country foreman covering that area, but you also had Fantasmic 1 kind of joining the Adventure Frontier foreman and sharing space there. And you had Fantasmic 2 sharing space with the New Orleans Square Clear Country foreman. And because what you guys, explain to people what you guys did.
Well, also, people forget is that busing was in our department at that time, too. Now it's in foods. And we also, for parade, for all events, for parade or Fantasmic, wherever, we drew from the busing teams as well for cleanups. But yeah, we picked whatever route we were going to run based on the crowd and how large of a crew we had, because we had various maps giving us a detailed route for how we were going to accomplish the cleanup. And then we would, just like parade, the parade lead would pull from each area 1 to 2 people, and they would all meet at either the Adventureland, Frontierland locker, Custodial locker, or the New Orleans ones, which is at the exit of Haunted Mansion. We would meet there and then head out in our designated groups, and we'd get it done. But we had very specific routes that and I think Loretta and Joanne kind of worked, she'd have to correct me on this, worked out how the traffic flowed best for us to accomplish that. And that also, we talked with the guest control people, too, on how they were going to support us in clearing out certain areas. And it actually was a well-oiled machine, just like parade. It was kind of, parade is actually more kind of a show in itself, just because of the way it would follow the parade. But yeah, no, we were always really proud on how we tackled that. And, and we didn't have much time. With parade, you have 2 parades. When Fantasmic premiered, and for at least the first 4 or 5 summers, we did 4 shows a night.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were back to back to back, and we had to be done. We had to get it clean before they let the rope down to bring in the next group. Mm-hmm. So,
and the first show was really bad because people had been waiting. So you had some people waiting there for hours and hours and hours before the first show. So you have all this accumulation of trash.
Yeah. The first show was always so bad. And people they'd camp out there for, 3 hours before. Some member of the family, poor grandma, or whoever, would be spreading out towels and blankets and, I can't remember who it was. Somebody hears this and could tell me. But there was newspaper all over the ground, like just newspaper. And one of my people went to go scoop up the newspaper. Mm-hmm. There was still a lot of people around, and there was like a child in there who squealed. Like, oh my God! And it was like, there's a kid in this pile of newspaper. It was such a mess. It was such a mess.
Wow.
But we got it done, though. We got it done. And we had some of the fastest brooms in the West over there.
It's really impressive, the whole route charts and everything. When I first started and saw that, wow, that's crazy. You go over the bridge, you turn here, and you go there, and
yeah.
Some of them had designated times, like by this time, like this is where you should be right when fireworks start. You know, like it was down to kind of a science, and I don't think people from the outside really think about how that kind of stuff happens. But when you got, 65,000 people in a park, and like half of those people are over in the Fantasmic area, and another group is waiting to come in, like you can't stand around and be like, oh, looking around the crowd, like I wonder if we should head down there, or, you have to have something. It's funny too. It's like you would think that hearing Fantasmic every single night that I would either have tuned it out or got sick of it, but I loved it.
Yeah, there was something about the high energy and just go, and I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the band that we had playing. Like we'd had the River Rascals out there, the pre-show, and sometimes we would be running around before a show because we'd get something that happened on the island that needed to be taken care of on one of the show boats. And it's an interesting environment. I loved how there's the things that we did every day. That was a routine. That was our job. And there was just always something else. Just things were just going on. That was our job to be in the moment and take care of things as they came up. And one of the reasons why I loved the West Side, especially New Orleans and Critter, is that it got probably the most calls of the whole park on the Disneyland side. And it wasn't like calls in the negative, like popcorn spills and stuff like that. It was, I don't know what it was, but people would walk over the Pirate Bridge. And I joke about this, and I go, for some reason, people walk over the Pirate Bridge, and they bleed to death, shit themselves, piss themselves, throw up, drink something. Right in the middle of that cleanup, Indy, springs a 100,000-gallon hydraulic, spill. It just had like the most, and we didn't even have a roller coaster, but there's something about that side. They had like the most code V's, and it had like the most medical cleanups, and it just kept me hopping, and I loved that. I loved that it was so busy over there. I went over to, and this is something that you're going to ask me what one of my highlights of working at Disney was I went over. I was selected as the Tiger Team lead. I still don't know why they call it that. I was the Tiger Team lead for DCA when it was under finishing construction. So I initially went over 4 months before it opened to the public, and I had a crew of 6, and it was like half day and half night. And we worked with Imagineering, just as each attraction or restaurant or restroom got turned over from the construction company to Disney property. It had to have its initial cleanups. We had to look for defects. We had to, we didn't have to, but we also ended up testing all the things for Imagineering because we were around.
Right.
And that was a perk. And but it's also the hardest I've ever worked. Initially, that shift was 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. The closer we got to opening, the larger the crew became because we were trying to get everything done. Like, we had to be up on the list, and every light had to be, clean because everything had construction dust on it. And but so I think at one point I had 32 people on my crew. And I've never had a crew that large since then. But we had a blast. And it was a combination of just working really hard and, oh my God, it's being obnoxious, sorry.
That's all right.
Working really hard and, but also having fun. Like, we need ride testers. The Mission Tortilla Factory had to have their ovens working for a whole month. Before they could open to the public. So every single day was fresh, warm, hot tortillas they just give us. and the same with the Boudin Bakery. We get sourdough bread to take home like every day. The kitchens needed people to taste all, Wolfgang Puck. They just put calls out on the radio. And so that was really fun. And but it was challenging working with all the construction companies at times. And then we had a day, like this epic day, where for weeks leading up to the day that we would tell all the construction companies that they had to be off property and take all of their equipment because we needed to get ready for the park's debut. And the day came and their stuff was still there, and we basically had large stake bed trucks, and we went around and collecting everything. I mean, wheelbarrows, hoses, ladders, jackhammers, and we just had this mound, like this mini mountain of equipment, and they would show up all angry at us, and we're like, wanting their stuff, and we're like, well, if you can find it and dig it out, we told you like 2 weeks ago that the steak was coming. Yeah. We have a park to get ready. So we were so exhausted after that day. And then we were leaving after that really long day, and that's when we heard that the sprinklers had gone off in the Muppet Theater. That the fire alarm had gone off.
Oh, no.
And the sprinkler, and the whole theater was doused. Brand new theater. Not even open to the public yet. And so the film, in the film room, the film had caught fire. Oh. And it just smoked, and then it put itself out. But it set off the fire alarm and the sprinklers. And we were there. I mean, I basically looked at everybody in the truck, and I was like, I'm going back. We need to get on this right away. And so everyone was like, yeah, we're in. And so we stayed and started extracting it like immediately. And they didn't have to replace anything, which was great. Everything, and then the third shift came and took over from us, and the fire department also came eventually. And we got some kudos for that, for acting really fast on it. But I was especially upset because I love the Muppets.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
Such a soft spot for them. They were filming a commercial. I think you guys were both gone by this point when they were filming the commercials at Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And we were watching them do that. It was such a trip. Like they had a scene where they were on the Mark Twain, mm-hmm. and it was the Electric Mayhem Band, and it's like 4 guys that are operating animal because they're all working a different, foot, leg, like drum. They're actually playing the drums, right?
Yeah.
But you don't even notice them. Like you just focus, even though you can see them, you just focused on. It's like, my God, it's animal. And they had them staged back behind the fire station on Town Square. Mm-hmm. There was a table that was laid out, and then each Muppet was lying on that table, and then below them was a suitcase, their own little personal, cute little suitcase with all their stuff, and it was just like so tempting to be like, I just want to be Fozzie. Can I just be Fozzie? But one of the really cool things about doing the DCA, getting back to that, is that Brian, why am I blanking? Henson. Brian Henson, mm-hmm. Jim Henson's son, and his sister, they came to sign off on the show. Oh. And it was really cool to be there when they were there. And then I actually had met him later on with a completely unrelated project.
Nice.
He's a really nice guy. And I had some really great encounters with Roy Disney Jr., both at the DCA and Winnie the Pooh. I worked on several projects where I was taken out for a while to be the custodial liaison for a new ride or during construction. And he remembered me. Like, he was a really great guy. Like, you guys have had this experience with some of the Imagineers and stuff. Like, they, it didn't matter to them that you were custodial. they're just like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, you're doing a great job, you know. And I don't know. I always had a soft spot for him. He was always very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different not having the Disneys involved in any way now, as we know. It's a corporation. And we've lost a lot with that, but
yeah,
you know, we had a good long run.
we had one. What is there any special events or anything you did that you have some memories about?
What didn't I do? I was on every event during my time that I was there. Interestingly enough, I listened to your interview with Bruce Kimbrell.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I remember Bruce. He probably doesn't remember me. But his wife, Lori, she was my favorite mansion lead. She was the A-lead at Mansion. So we used to pal around. And so I did kind of know him, but not, you know, not know him.
Mm-hmm.
But we were there during the same time period. And he was talking about Elizabeth Taylor's 60th birthday party. And that was my first special event, big special event as a young lead. And they'd handpicked us for that. And that's the very first event, but the first and only. The whole time I worked there, they brought us in for a meeting. We got, like, debriefed by security, like, you know, these are the do's and don'ts. And then we had color-coded wristbands to our access to her and her party. So, like, Bruce was her personal escort, right? So he would have had a lavender wristband, if he had a wristband. And then we had blue because we had to be in and amongst them, but you know, not necessarily could engage her or her party directly. And that was a big deal for me. I was really young, and it was a super big deal, and surrounded by all this old Hollywood. And it was just really cool. It was the only time they made us wear tux. We had to wear a tux. Because there were other things that we had to wear, something that was themed here and there, but that's the only time we had to wear something like formal. So that was really cool. And then all that old Hollywood, and I had this moment where, you know who Roddy McDowell is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at some point in the evening, he walked up to me and he put a hand on either one of my shoulders and he goes, "Darling, you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much." and I was like, "Oh, wow." And I turned around to some other people on the crew, and I'm like, "That was Roddy McDowell." And they're like, "Who?" I was like, "Oh, How Green Was My Valley, National Velvet." I was thinking about the movie he did with Elizabeth Taylor, right? Because they were child actresses together. And then I was like, they're like, "We don't know." And I'm like, "Cornelius from Planet of the Apes." And they're like, "Oh, cool." That was the first big, like, celebrity party or media event that I ever worked. And then I worked at all of them.
Right.
In some capacity after that. And I've never been someone who's super starstruck unless it was someone I admired as a child.
Right.
And I had two incidences where, I was always very cool at, like, not fawning over them, not asking questions, not staring. And at some point, I left. I took a leave of absence. I never left Disney, but I took a leave of absence. And I was in the film industry briefly. I was working on backlots and cafeterias with television and movie actors, and it's not a big deal. But twice, and only once, did I feel like I made an idiot out of myself. Twice I had to run in with an actor that I truly admired as a child. And the first one was with Mark Hamill.
Oh.
And I probably only worked there for 2-3 years, and I was standing in front of I was at the Castle forecourt. It was nighttime, and this kind of short guy wearing a baseball cap pulled down really low approached me, and he started asking me questions, and I recognized his voice, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Mark Hamill," and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker when I was a kid, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm like, don't do it, don't fangirl out. And I was so good. But we talked for like 20 minutes. And he was like the nicest guy. Mm-hmm. And that is so great when someone you admired as a child turns out to be a really down-to-earth, great person. Because you don't want your dreams, your fantasies crushed, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't acknowledge who he was until he acknowledged who he was. So we were just chit-chatting about Disney stuff, and then he's like, I'm just waiting for my wife and kids. You know, I don't get a tour guide when I come. I want them to wait in line like everyone else. And he's like, I just can't get away with it on Star Tours. So I was like, oh, good. You just acknowledged who you were. I just want to say, huge fan. And then we just started talking about what he was doing now, and he was just starting to do all those the voiceover work that he was doing, and then the Joker and all that stuff. So that was big for me. And then the time that I made a fool out of myself was many, many, many years later at the 50th anniversary. The ceremony, Julie Andrews was there, and she was leaving the castle forecourt where they were doing, this presentation and everything, and like this kickoff, and she was walking back. She walked back to Plaza Gardens and was going through Fantasyland to go over to the carousel because they were dedicating Jingles, the horse, to, for her horses on there, right? And I just came around the corner with my crew, and I just ran smack into her, but not physically. That happened with other people, but not her. So I run into her, and I just went, "Good morning, Julie Andrews," like a total idiot. And she went, "Hello there," and she just kept walking graciously away. And then got around the corner, and I was like, oh my god. And my crews are always used to me being like, no big deal. Mm-hmm. And they're like, who are you? I'm like, that's Mary Poppins. That's Maria Von Trapp. Freaking out.
I remember I remember that happening because I was another lead on the other side of the castle for that ceremony or whatever it was. Because we came out from like by Matterhorn, like we came out from that way. And I remember you later telling me about that. Yeah.
I was all stoked because I met Mary Poppins. Yeah. Well, and then when I saw Dick Van Dyke, I kept it together, but I was still like, oh my god, Van Dyke. But yeah, none of the other. There was only one time where I was tempted to walk up to a celebrity and ask them a question because I met Robin Williams when I was 7 years old. Mm-hmm. He was doing Mork and Mindy, and it was a chance encounter. I was running track and I was practicing. I was running track at the time. Well, it's a longer story. I was an Indian maiden, which was, I did not want to join Girl Scouts, but I was told by my mother I had to join something. So my Indian maiden group had gone down to San Diego State because there was something called the Battle of the Network Stars back in that day, where all the major shows from NBC, CBS, and ABC would compete in like these Olympic things, competitions. And it was the cast of like MASH and Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and Mork and Mindy. There's all these 70 shows. This is 1978. And afterwards, you line up and you can get their autographs and pictures and stuff. Oh, I think the Hulk was there. Yeah, I remember. I got Lou Ferrigno's autograph. And when that happened, when it was all over, everybody mobbed Robin Williams. And he freaked out, and he ran, and he climbed over this chain link fence, and he ran away. No one ever saw him at the event again. We now know it's because most likely he was not. How should we say it? All there.
Yeah. Yeah, not in a headspace where he wanted to deal with that. Yes,
He was mentally impaired. Well, he was also addicted to drugs at the time. We did not know that until much later. But so anyway, he was paranoid and ran away. And we were staying at the KOA campground, and I had to practice because I was in track and field, and I was running the track at San Diego State. And next thing I knew, he was running with me. We were running laps together.
Wow.
And eventually we stopped, and he hung out with me, and he was so sweet. And he signed an autograph. I have a picture of him doing the autograph. If I had it today, it would be worth so much money. But he didn't just write, to Jen, love Robin Williams. He wrote, to Jen, from Mort, Nanu Nanu. We drew a little spaceship, like the whole egg and everything, and then he signed his name and everything. And it lasted about 2 weeks before I had taken it to school and show and tell and folded it up and put it in my back pocket, and guess what happened to it? Yeah. Kids know the value of collectibles now, and back then, not so much. But but he was at the event for the opening of Toontown. He was there with his wife and 2 kids at the time, and I was standing right next to him, and I almost went like, "Do you remember this little blonde kid?" But I didn't. But it would seem like something that would kind of stand out. He spent like 20 minutes with me that time. Yes, yeah, it was about a good 25 minutes, just hanging out, being funny, being sweet with this little kid. So I have good memories of him.
Wow.
Yeah, you and I we saw so many people. It's interesting. It's an interesting environment,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's so much. There's so many stories. What else do you want to hear?
Well, you were there, 23? You were there like 23 years, weren't you?
I was 1 month shy of 24 years, so I just say 24 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have stayed if they had allowed me to work part-time weekends. They weren't offering that at the time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. And after my divorce, all my old managers and people were like, come back, we'll make you leave again right away. And I'm like, I'm a single mom now. I can't, first of all, I can't make enough money working there. And I can't start at the bottom again. I can't work closing shifts. And I don't want to work holidays. And,
yeah.
So, had I never left, I had a pretty sweet, but by the time I left, I think I was like number 12 or 13 on the seniority list. And by now, I'd be...
You were on the DCA side,
I'd be at the top 5. DCA, to finish the DCA story, I opened that park. We had to decide by April. They opened in February. We had to decide by April if we were going to if I was going to stay there or go back to Disneyland.
Okay.
And DCA was not challenging enough for me. I was bored to tears. You guys know me. It was a blast when it was, when we were getting the park ready. And then it opened and it was like crickets. The busiest area in the park was Paradise Pier, but you literally were just cleaning up Code V's all day long. That's all you did. Code V's on the Ferris wheel and Code V's on the coaster, and nosebleeds on Maliboomer. That's all you did. It was medical cleanups all day long. It kept you busy, but you got a little old after a while. And I loved the people that I was working with over there, but I needed to go home. So I went back, and that's where I stayed until I left.
Wow.
And I do miss it. It just feels like home. Feels like home. Well, on my last day, it was really beautiful. I wasn't retiring, but I'd been there for so long, and I knew so many people and across lines of businesses that were there, and I'd grown up there. My send-off was very much like a retirement. In some ways, I was astounded. I was very emotional. They did so much that I wasn't expecting. And they brought my family in. It was, there were gifts and plaques and, like, I was not expecting that. But, and then Mike Hart, who I always call my Disney dad because I've known him since I was 19, and he's had to raise me in some ways to kick my butt. He walked me out, and he started to cry, and I started to cry. And this big long hug, and it just felt so weird. I just felt so empty when I walked away.
Yeah.
I know that sounds just really cheesy and sentimental, but I was leaving home. And, I think part of it, too, is I grew up in the military, so I never really had a real home. Like, we would move, like, every 3 or 4 years, right? My grandparents' home here in Southern California was my home base. So I was born here. I lived here till I was 9. My mom married a military man. But I came back to California every summer. And then when I was 14, we came back to this area. And I graduated out of Los Alamitos High School, which was my mom's high school, too. But I just, nothing had ever been so, consistent and solid in there. And a family, and it truly felt like I was leaving home. Like I'd grown up there, and now I'm going away to college or something. It was very weird, and it still gets emotional when I go sometimes. And I hate that I can't go backstage. It's just like, that's part of my home that I missed that I can't. So that was cool when I was there for Shirley's retirement because I had access to backstage.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and then there's this whole part of it though that whenever they make changes, I'm like, don't change anything. But it's not mine. If it's in New Orleans, I'm like, it's not mine anymore if you change it.
Yeah.
And then Galaxy's Edge. I mean, man, I would have been all over that. If I'd still been there, that would have been my land. Oh,
yeah.
Better believe it. But I don't know if you knew this, but there was this really big I-beam that was going up into the highest point of Galaxy's Edge. And then they were allowing cast members to sign it. I got 6 texts from people telling me they'd put my name on it for me. Some iteration of my name, either it's Jennifer Smith or Jennifer Furfaro or Foof or Foofinator. I didn't ask anybody to. They just went, hey, I thought of you. I knew you'd want to be a part of this, and I put your name on it. It's like, cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
I know what you're saying about the memories. I was just there last week for one day with my son, but it's like I've learned to separate, and I don't know how I did it in my mind, but the time that I went there as a child and teen to the time I went there as with my wife when we were dating, to working there, to now being a father and taking my son there. It's like I've learned to separate all this, and then when I run into someone I know there, I ran into Rudy last week, and I was like, then it all kind of comes back, but it's weird. It's just really hard to explain.
It is hard to explain to anyone who's not worked there, especially if they've not worked there. It's been a significant or an influential time in their life there.
Right.
It's when you're growing up there and you're learning valuable lessons and skill sets, it has an even bigger effect on you.
Yeah.
It's a job that when I hired in, you could still provide for your family by working there. By the time I left, you could not. And that's really sad to me. that, people weren't, Disney was not keeping up with living wage. They used to pay, starting above the minimum wage that I hired in, and it was one of the better jobs with the good benefits and super flexible scheduling, especially if you're a student. That's why I think that's one of the reasons why we had these generations that grew up together, because we all hired in as college kids. And so, there's Larry and Harry, and all those people, they all hired in around the same time. And they're, in their 20s, and some of them in their teens, whatever. And they stayed. A big group of them stayed, and they grew together. And then, we all started around the same time, and then we grew together. And they don't have that anymore. And part of that is just really not working with the students in college programs like they used to. And there's just a connection. Like, we used to work until 1:30 in the morning and then go out to Denny's until 4. Hang out in the parking lot. We did more things together as a group, had more relationships, and even before I left, people were really just coming to work every day and then going home. So it's a different vibe. There's someone, they have a new production manager now for Custodial, who is a friend of mine, and I'm so happy she's there. She's old school Disney. She has a tremendous amount of respect for Custodial, and was absolutely thrilled to take the position when it was offered to her. Her name's Teresa Hawley, and she's fantastic. It is exactly what Custodial needs, because she is very invested. Yeah, she's very invested. She's very would like to bring some of the old culture back. And I was talking to her about her going there, and I'm like, look, there's a few people that you should look up when you get there. I mentioned Tommy Townsend, and he's someone who's highly respected, well loved by everyone. And if you want honest feedback from someone who will also help you, talk to him. And she got back to me. She's like, I talked to Tommy. We had a long conversation. We've had several more. I love him. He's so valuable, the information he's giving me. And I touched base with Tommy, and he's like, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm so happy she's here. And that makes me really hopeful, because, as you know, things have gone a little awry. Not just in Custodial. It's kind of park-wide in some ways, but Custodial has been hit really hard. And the morale is probably the lowest it's ever been. Well, not anymore, but it reached a point where it was the lowest it has ever been. And I'm very happy for them. And you guys remember Matt Campbell, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So after I left, he became a manager in Custodial. And I was very happy that he was the only manager on that team that had once been a custodian.
Wow.
But he left last November.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, and he took a management position. He's the head of Custodial for Riverside City College, and I've been working for him just as an outside contractor, and it's been so nice to see his face every day, and he's such a great guy, and I'm so proud of him. And he's, I didn't know him as a manager. I left when he was still a lead, and to see his progression, I'm very, from Lost Boy, remember we used to call him the Lost Boy?
Yeah.
They're kind of thorn in our sides, right? To successful manager and family man, and he's a good friend, but I'm really proud of him, and he's trying to bring some of that Disney culture and mentality to, the campus at RCC, and it's a tough go. They haven't been brought up like we have in the school. Well, you guys have worked in the, Lynn, have you worked in the school districts, right? At some point?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah,
okay.
I still am.
So you know what the
Been
school districts are like.
15 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you at?
In Utah, at a middle school.
Okay. So you know the bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
the reputation that custodial can have within the school system. It doesn't really matter if it's K through 12 or UCLA.
No, yeah, it's been interesting because I'll go to, when I went for my interview, it turned into telling stories about Disneyland instead of like really interviewing for the job I was in. So it's just one of those things that having Disneyland on your resume, it really means a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the upper management over there was excited about Matt coming in, and because they were wanting to improve standards there, and they're like, this is somebody who can truly do that for us. But it's been temporary for me. So I've got other things going on. I was just looking for some extra money, and he's like, hey, you can come work, bring back your old custodial ways and come sub for me at RCC. And I'm like, I get to see you every day? Hell yeah, I'm in. So it's been good.
Cool. Well, I know we can't get 24 years into 1 hour.
No,
but
you cannot.
But now that you've done this, you need to come back and share more.
Right.
So.
I can. You know me, I'm a talker.
All right.
One of the best parts about the job too was that social environment it is.
Yeah.
I
loved that. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's.
I don't know why it took us this long to have you back, or to have you. I know that it's been in the back of my mind that I wanted you to come on, and then it's just. I'm glad it worked out though.
Oh yeah, of course. And then Wendy told me that she told me that you'd reached out to her, and I was like, hey, they just reached out to me too. I haven't listened to hers yet. I haven't had time to listen to hers yet, but and I've heard some of the bigger ones, the Rays and like the Bruces and some of the Imagineering guys, and but yeah, I'm honored. Any former custodians out there, man, let's have a reunion.
Let's do another reunion. Yeah.
Let's do another reunion.
There we go. Yeah. That's herding cats, all right. But it can be done. It can be done.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to the age where
unfortunately
reunions are retirement parties or,
Yeah. Yeah.
Weddings. It's not. Let's make it for something really happy, right?
Right.
Put my plea out there to my fellow and former custodians.
Definitely.
All right. Well, it was lovely talking to you guys.
Well, thank you.
You too.
And anytime. Ring me up anytime.
We will, for sure.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Jen.
Take care, man.
Okay. Well, that concludes episode 339.
I would like to talk with her for much longer, but
I know.
we can't. We've got to. We can't keep these things at 4 hours.
No, and like I said, you can't get 24 years of the park into 1 hour, but we can't do. Yeah. But
I'm sorry. I referred to her as Jennifer Furfaro in the opening. That was her previous name. She's Jennifer Smith now, but that was. We when she worked with us, she was Jennifer Furfaro and affectionately known as Foof. So, but I wanted to note that. So, but I'm so appreciative that she joined us. You got kind of an overview of, she was great to work with.
For sure. Yeah, just kind of, I enjoyed that conversation because it was kind of like what it was like to be a cast member in a way, and I didn't expect it to go that way, but I'm glad it did. So that was really good. A couple of things before we're done here. Instagram, I've been kind of trying to do more and learning Instagram a little more, and that is something I'm going to try to post more, especially as it gets closer to D23 and during D23. I'm going to be posting a lot of stuff there. So if you want to go over there, you can follow The Sweep Spot. Just search that. You can follow over there. We still have our other Twitter. It's Lynn Sweep Spot. And what is your Twitter, Ken?
Conversations. That's with an S on the end of it. So it's like conversations, except it's my name, Ken Versations.
And we still have our group, our Facebook group and page, The Sweep Spot. You can go over and join that. And then, like we mentioned, our Patreon, you can join that. I think that's it. We don't have any new reviews, so if you have been listening to the show for a little while and you enjoy it, obviously you keep returning. So go over and leave us a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out.
Yes.
Spread
the word. Tell people we're here. And come to our website and get some great T-shirts, mugs, and all kinds of great stuff.
All kinds of stuff. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Talk with you next week.